Dylan Moore with IRETA TV, and we have in studio, well, not in studio, on the over the internet, Nancy Churchill, who is a CSG student, Center for Self-Governance, who we've had Mark Hare here in studio and online before, and I wanted to get an opportunity to bring, we had Mark on, he talked about all these great things, and, the question naturally arises, well, yeah, you say you can do this, or you say somebody else can do this, but let's see somebody actually doing something based on what you're teaching. And Nancy is resident in Washington State. She can give a little bit more information about where she is and what she's doing there, and take a look at Nancy, who's taken the training, and say, okay, here's where she was before, here's where she is now, and here's where she intends on going, and what that training was able to allow her to do. So first and foremost, Nancy, thank you for taking the time to meet with me here today and tell your story.
Thank you very much, Dylan. My name is Nancy Churchill. I am a longtime resident of Washington State. I spent about 25 years over in the Redmond area before I moved out to Ferry County, Washington. I live in Republic, Washington now, and I'm the Ferry County Republican Party State Committeewoman. I met Mark Kerr shortly after I got involved with the Ferry County Republican Party and took the Center for Self-Governance training and started to apply some of the things that I learned from Mark right away. One of the things CSG teaches is relationship building and approaching everyone that you meet with a spirit of curiosity, without prejudgment, but trying to build relationships and learn more about them and what's important to them. And I put that to work every day as part of the work I do with the Ferry County Republicans. In addition to doing volunteer work with the Republican Party, I also have started writing a conservative opinion column. It's called Dangerous Rhetoric. It's published in my local paper and is now being carried in about 5 other papers around Washington State. That's something that I would never have done prior to doing the Center for Self-Governance training. So, Dylan,
go ahead and finish. I had a follow-up question.
Sure. We had talked about a few days ago, where we are, where I started and where I was now. And I would say that the Center for Self-Governance training really gave me the tools and skills that I needed to be a little bit more politically courageous.
Politically courageous. So could you talk about curiosity and courageousness then? Or courageousness, courage. Because, this is something we spoke about with Mark too, and I've gone through the training as well, as I've mentioned on Mark's show as well, that the ability to go to someone who's in the political arena, whether it's an elected official or even a bureaucrat, and get them to talk to you. If you come out of the gate, particularly if the person is on the other side of the aisle or politically, opposite from you, if you come out of the gate swinging your issue, you immediately put a wall up, and now it's a fight. But right. I found this out too, because I did the homework, that when you, even someone who's, you would say, is completely antagonistic to your political views, if you go in and you're very curious, and you can tell us more about what that means to you in a second, you're very curious, suddenly the person opens up to you and a relationship is developed, and there's this really, it's a cool feeling, but at the same time, it's like, whoa, what's going on? You can influence that person.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So do you want to tell a little bit more about your experience being curious?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So when I first started my CSG homework, one of the first people I approached in my community was someone I didn't know, a longtime resident of the community who had been the school principal for many years and is currently the chair of the local hospital board. I didn't know her at all. And she has a position of some importance, and I decided to do my first interview with her. We had a lovely time. we got to know each other. She didn't know me at the time. I wasn't writing, and I'm still pretty new to the community. So we just had a great conversation and got to know each other and kind of developed an acquaintanceship. I wouldn't call it so much of a friendship, but we felt like I felt like we had a lot in common, that we both really cared about the community and wanted the best for the community. And I'm glad I had that, because I'm currently not the chair's favorite person. I've been going to the hospital board meetings regularly. Not something, again, I would have done. I would never have gone to a board meeting before I started to do CSG training. But the more training I took, the more I realized how important these little hospital boards and community meetings and those relationships with those people are. So I started attending the hospital board meetings since the governor started implementing his mandates, again, with the spirit of curiosity to see exactly how far things would go in our county as far as mandates and firing people and things like that. And it's important for the board to know that the community really cares about what they're doing, even if the community doesn't agree with them. So as I've been going to the board and voicing my opinion to the board, I've had some resistance there. And that's good. That's part of the political conversation. But it takes courage to go into a group that does not agree with you and, in fact, thinks maybe that you're a bad person for your political stance or your personal beliefs, and to go in there anyway and say, no, I think you guys are wrong. I think you should be looking at this. One of the conversations I had with the board a couple of months ago was about the availability of alternate treatments. I believe that if patients ask for a treatment by name, if they've researched it, they know the pros and cons of a particular treatment, that then they should be able to ask their doctor for a treatment and receive it. And that was not a stance that my hospital administration and board was very happy with at all. So but it's important, in order to be effective politically, it's important to have those conversations and let people that are in a position of responsibility like that know that not everyone agrees with them. Otherwise, they're just in their hospital bubble.
Just doing whatever they want.
Doing it without really understanding the impact on the community. And I can't point to any particular outcome that I would take credit for, other than the fact that I know they're hearing me, whether they like it or not. And I know that that's an important part of the political process.
Well, and then do you know whether or not the hospital will allow alternative treatments at this point?
Well, so I'm not going to take credit for any decision that the hospital administration will or will not take. They're under a lot of pressure from the State Board of Health, which is currently seeking to remove the licenses for physicians that are not vaccinated, or for physicians that allow alternative treatments. And in addition, the pharmacies are not filling those prescriptions, even if they're being written.
I have been seeing that as well.
So there's the hospital. I understand completely how much pressure the hospital board is under from the political organizations that are above them. The thing that I was very happy to see, we're a very small, remote, rural community, and they did decide that they could not afford to lose 30% of their staff, which was about the number that were unvaccinated, and they did allow religious exemptions. I don't think everyone got an exemption, but most of the people got an exemption of when they asked for one. So it's they do understand that there's people in the community that just don't want that particular treatment, and they are making steps to work maybe a little bit more compassionately with those in the community. who don't make the choices they recommend.
Right. And then, I mean, like you said, you can't necessarily say that was my accomplishment or not.
No, I wouldn't.
However, whether or not you could directly point to that, you could say, look, I don't know if you are the biggest voice, but it sounds like you may be the biggest voice in these board meetings. And if your voice is there constantly, that voice has to be in their head as they're making these decisions. And like you said, if they're just in this bubble, like, okay, well, the State Board of Health said do this, so we're going to do that, and then, that's the end of the story, versus, okay, here's someone within the community saying, well, here's another perspective, here's another viewpoint, and if they're not combative about it, like you said, you come with a sense of curiosity. And then there was one point I wanted to clear up. So this first interview that you did for your CSG training, you went to the hospital board. Was that the chair, or was that somebody else?
The chair. No, I went specifically to the chair.
Okay,
of that
so
board.
you had a good conversation up front, but then it has kind of, gotten a little adversarial. Yeah.
Right now, it's pretty adversarial, but I don't blame the board member, the chair, for that. Her passion is bringing high quality health to the community. And I give her credit for doing the best she can in difficult circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just my job as the community member to speak up for those who don't know how to go to the board, who don't know how to have the types of difficult conversations that I have with the board, and who don't even see that as an option. A lot of people come to me quietly, privately, voicing their concerns over various issues at the hospital, and that gives me the responsibility to go to the hospital board, and I've been telling them outright, you do realize that a significant portion of our community does not trust you, will not set foot in your hospital, and for our community, that's disastrous.
Yeah,
that's terrible to have a healthcare facility that's not trusted, because we're way more than 50% conservative out here. So it's super important that they figure out how to serve everybody in the community and not just the people that agree with them.
Well, there's something interesting there you also brought up, is that if we take a look at this person, and it's very easy to quickly jump on the boat of you're on their side, right? You're pushing this crap. You're the one forcing these mandates down. But if we take a step back and say, okay, there is a good chance that this is just a regular person. I mean, maybe she is part of the secret cabal, right? Right. But it's that does happen, and I don't want to push that aside. But in a lot of cases, these are just normal people stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? So I mean, that's some serious pressure as the chairman or the chairwoman of a hospital to say, okay, the state authority is saying we're going to start removing licenses if you don't do what we say. Right. That's
and
huge.
Funding. Not just licensing, funding.
Oh, I mean, that's even huger. Right. Or more huge. So
I get it.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things is you have to say, okay, this is a real human being, and I have to take into account what's actually going through their head, what their desires are, what's important to them, and that's how you start guiding. Using that influence to guide. Right.
Right. And so in this particular situation, my initial conversation with her was it might have been 3 years ago, well before any kind of crisis of health in the community. So when this came up and I started challenging the board on some of their decisions and what was happening, I had that personal relationship foundation built already. Because what I see is that when you don't have that, people prejudge you, automatically. And I think that's just part of human nature. So that's why this relationship building that we learn in CSG training is so important. I know this isn't to brag about who I know, or
go ahead and brag.
To show that it takes work, but I have relationships with my state legislators and my senator. I have personal relationships with my school board members. I go to the school board meetings, and when I walk in the door, they call out my name, thank you for coming. So, and it's because no matter whether I agree with them or not, I'm always polite. I'm always trying to be understanding of their position, so that I may think they're wrong, but that doesn't make them a bad person. Mm-hmm. So I'm always trying to project that kind of common humanity, common understanding. We're all trying to solve these problems together. And the only way we can solve these problems is if we have a political dialogue. That's why censorship anywhere is so dangerous. So, and I face calls for censorship from my column every week in my local paper, almost every week. And
I don't like it. Turn it off.
Right?
Don't read it.
This person should not be, literally, this person is dangerous and should not be printed in our newspaper. So, editor, you need to stop this person's speech. And I'm very fortunate that my neighborhood editor and publisher of the local paper believes in free speech and the responsibilities of the Fourth Estate to publish all points of view, which he does.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to bend over for a second. My computer's about to run out of battery. I need to plug it in. Hold on.
Go for it.
I should have plugged it in before we got started.
Yeah. Was that it? You plugged it in? Okay, that was very easy.
I had it ready.
Could you speak a little bit? We talked about this before. The Department of Ecology. Mm-hmm. So, one of the things is if you were to take, not you, but the listener, if a listener were to take the CSG training, you'll find out that regional government is one of the prime tools used to basically erode specifically the 7-layer boundary republic that our system is, or more specifically just erode America away. And the concept of regional government is, we've got these boundaries between all the different government levels. We got the states and the legislature with the state, and there's legislature and the federal government, and the counties have a county executive, and all this sort of. There's all these layers of government where one layer isn't supposed to be able to reach across to the other layer, where you can create these regional governments, and these regional governments just splat all over the board, and they completely ignore what all these layers are. And in Washington State, we have the Department of Ecology, which I'm actually made to understand was the basis that the EPA. EPA was going out of my mind. The EPA modeled itself after the Washington State's Department of Ecology, if I'm knowing my history correctly. That the Department of Ecology, or the FDA, not the FDA, EPA, FDA is another good example, is this kind of regional government that just kind of splatters over everything. And so you've actually been in conversation with somebody you made a relationship with that is considering bringing a Department of Ecology facility into your area, right?
Well, a little bit different than that. Oh. So in our state, ecology, the Department of Ecology is a state level entity, and there's a conservation district in my area. Almost every county has at least one, and they're looking to solve some problems, and they're hoping to get funding from the Department of Ecology and maybe bring a Department of Ecology staff member into the county. My experience with this, it's not exactly regional government in this case, but my experience with this is that anytime you take funding from a state level entity, you are accepting some golden handcuffs that limit future independence from said entity. So I'm concerned by that.
Let me modify what I said then. So if it's not regional government, if it's a state entity, that still does doing what you just said, which is we accept the funding, we get some golden handcuffs, and that limits the independence. Well, that's starting to dissolve the line between the county government and the state government.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes, it causes tremendous friction then. So if you don't mind, let me go back to the example of the hospital and the system of layers in the state for hospitals. So we currently, my county is part of a regional health region. So there's the Northeast Tri-County Health, which is 3 counties in Northeast Washington. And then they're kind of sitting over the local level and over the local hospital. So they have some power over the county commissioners and mayors, and they also have power over the things that the hospital can or cannot do.
Mm-hmm.
And this regional health board is basically the direct funnel from the state health board into the region. So even though there's quite a bit of resistance in Northeast Washington to the mandates and to some of the recommended practices, there's this health board, the regional health board, has a whole lot of power, and they're not elected officials. So
it's another board, like you said, just these little boards that are everywhere. Yeah.
Well, this particular, the Tri-County Health Board is elected officials, but it's run by an administrator who happens to actually be part of the Ferry County Hospital. But they basically do what this administrator tells them to do. Now, there's not a lot of political courage pushing back against
and it's due to lack of political courage, not due to lack of actual power, right?
No, it's that we're going back then to the being between the rock and the hard place, mm-hmm. where this person at the regional health level, the unelected person, has funding power over the elected officials. You see this in same problem happening in the local school board races, where parents are feeling so disempowered at the local school board level. There's actually the State Association of School Board Directors is created by law in the RCWs, and the school board members shall be part of this association, and the school districts shall fund this state organization, which is not, the school board directors are elected, but the organization is basically a mouthpiece for whoever's in OSPI. So again, we are blurring the boundary with non-governmental organizations and with regional health organizations, or any kind of regional organization, to blur the boundary between the local electeds and the state electeds and what their powers and responsibilities are. And I have a lot of sympathy for my local elected officials and like my local school board members, because their responsibility to provide a great education to our students is considerably constrained by law coming out of the progressive side of the state. Mm-hmm. So then we get down to how do we uncuff those chains? How do we free ourselves? And as far as I can tell, here in Washington State, and we're unique in some respects, we must have a revolution at the ballot box to elect more conservative, less progressive people to our state legislature and our House and our Senate. Because right now both houses are controlled by progressives, and they're implementing progressive policies in law, state law, and in state boards. Everywhere you look in Washington State, there's a problem, whether it's in the shipping industry, whether it's in education, whether it's in transportation, whether it's in wildlife management, wildfire management, all of these different taxing, transportation, you name it. Right now, there's a progressive politician somewhere in the mix, or a progressive unelected official in the mix, promoting really bad ideas and ignoring the voice of the people.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then obviously, if we can get the right people in, that's going to be an improvement. And part of the conversation that we wanted to have here is, and if we want to go back to the regional board or the local conservation guy, is that okay? Here's the scene that we have right now, and here's the people that we have elected right now. Now, obviously, we want better people elected, but we don't have that at the moment. How can we, what's our power to work within the system that we have right now to affect change, right?
It's actually really, that's a great question, because what I've taken away from CSG training is we have the most power at the local level.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why these little local boards and districts are super, super important to build those personal relationships. I call people up. I'll say, hey, can we have lunch? Hey, can I talk to you for 10 minutes about this issue? I had a conversation with 2 out of 3 of my county commissioners yesterday on a particular issue that I was concerned about. And I haven't reached out to my conservation director person yet, but it's on my list of people that I just want to sit down with. And then he sent me some data I need to look at, and then approach it not from, this is a bad idea that you've got, but we have a problem in our community that we need to solve. And
maybe we can come up with a different idea from the one that you've
come up with a different idea, right? Are there other solutions that you haven't considered?
Right.
I haven't had time to dive into that yet. It's election season, but it's those. That's what I've seen, is that when I have these personal relationships with my local electeds and other leaders, whether they're elected or not, then they are more responsive when I bring them a concern.
Mm-hmm.
And it just makes sense. When you know, like, and trust someone, you are going to have a more honest conversation when times are tough.
Absolutely. And then, just to boil down what you said, specifically looking at this conservationist guy, if we identify that bringing in the Department of Ecology blurs the lines of the boundaries, and our goal here is to, put those boundaries back, make them crisper, not more blurred. And if turns out that you have the influence to go to this guy and say, here's a better idea that we don't need the Department of Ecology for, you just saved that line from getting blurred. Right.
And it's just in one little local area, but it's my area of influence. So, because I do have a great relationship with that guy, and I am on the Lake Association, who's, interested in improving the water quality in our local lake. So, it's if I can save that boundary or limit the damage to that boundary, then I'm achieving everything
that's absolutely
achieve.
huge. And because the way that these boundaries are getting eroded, it's not by one person going around with an eraser,
right,
eroding all these things. This is thousands and thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of people, maybe millions, I don't know, within the country actively working at it. And I'm sure 95% of them don't understand what they're doing in the sense that we're talking about. But if we want to start going, putting them back, we got to, what they're doing works. It's very, very effective what they're doing. So if we do it back, and the way that you do it back is you get these little tiny wins all over the place, and you have lots and lots of people doing these little tiny wins. And with the CSG training, I hope, the people watching and listening are getting this from you, is what you're doing isn't that hard.
Right.
Right.
You're having conversations, building relationships, and staying focused. Mm-hmm. I want people to have hope, because so many people feel disempowered. Your personal relationships with people are more valuable than you realize. And a quiet conversation on the phone at the right time can make a huge difference. You can have a huge impact. You probably won't even know how much of an impact that you have had, but it's so important to stay connected to your local community, or if you're not connected, try to get connected and start with a topic that you're really interested in. I got involved with the CSG training. The hot button issue I had on my mind at the time when I started was figuring out how to influence the conversation about comprehensive sex education. And I did a lot of work. I just focused on that one issue. And now that I've got a couple of years of fighting for issues under my belt, I've spread out, and I'm covering more issues that I'm interested in, like, the environment, and not just the education, but understanding better how to influence Olympia. But a friend of mine asked me the other day, they were like, how do you keep going even though there's so few wins. And I'm like, well, I'm in a game, and it's like a game of football, and I'm grinding it out on the field, play after play after play.
Moving the ball down the field.
I'm just moving the ball down the field. I'm not the whole team. I'm not responsible for the end result. I just am making the play. This is the thing that is very clear in my head that I can do right now is to have this phone call, or to write that letter, or I'm creating a class with a friend of mine that it's going to be called Influencing Olympia Effectively. We're going to try to have it ready before the session so that people can figure out how to track a bill through Olympia and how to contact the legislators effectively and in a timely manner. And instead of sitting back at the end of the 60-day session and go, what happened, that we actually know what happened. And we know we were in the game fighting for the things that we believe in. So, it doesn't mean we'll win the game, but we got to be in the game.
Right. And then the more people that are in the game, because from what you've told me so far, you're working solo, right?
Oh, no, I have a team.
You have a Ferry County team, or do you have a team in Ferry County?
There's a Ferry County team.
Okay, great.
There's other groups I'm affiliated with.
And you mean specifically a CSG group, right?
Both CSG groups and non-CSG groups, all align with anyone that aligns with me. So
well, and the point that I wanted to make is, and why I was focusing on the CSG group, is that this is what you specifically are able to do. Well, now, if you've got 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 people within a county all doing this at the same time, I think it's easy to see how quickly this could magnify and how much effect 5 or 10 people can have over what's going on in a county.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we have a little CSG team here in Ferry County. We're not as organized as we'd like to be, but we do what we can do. And then because of my work at the Washington State, I'm in the Washington State Republican Party. I represent Ferry at the state level. That opens up.
Tell me a little bit.
That's really, we meet like 3 or 4 times a year as a group. Everybody, all these state committee men and women, and the chairs of each county party meet every 3 or 4 months to talk about issues. So now I have this expanded network of relationships, people that I can go to. For example, I was talking to someone from Spokane the other day about a shared concern and how to approach that shared concern, not only inside the state committee, but in our local communities. So again, when you get involved and you start building relationships, you can go a long way. I have conversations with people on the other side of the state all the time. I can call Caleb Heimlich and have him answer my calls.
And Caleb Heimlich's the head of the Republican Party in Washington State, just for anybody who doesn't know.
That's right.
Yeah.
So there's and they people. I'm really clear. Excuse me. I'm really clear with where I stand, and even within the Republican Party, we're not all going to agree on every issue. But I always try to be real upfront about this is what I think, and this is what I'm fighting for. I'm fighting for the people in my county and what we believe in. And I think that's beneficial to the entire Republican Party and to the entire conservative movement. And, and then other people get to have their opinions and their say too. That's how we play the political game. We have lots of conversations.
Tell me how this has helped you get off the political emotional roller coaster.
Oh, well, that game analogy that I was using, that levels it out for me. Like the game. So when I started and I was really concerned about comp sex ed, I thought that stopping that bill was the game. And I was emotionally crushed when we didn't stop it. And it took me a couple of months to recover. And I see that happening to people all the time. They get their toe in the water. They learn a little bit about the issue. They are very passionate and they want to make a difference. And then when they don't have a success,
They give up.
They feel like they failed, and they give up, and they feel like they're disempowered. And this shift has just happened for me in the last year, where I'm starting to take a longer view. When you study the history of this country, you realize that this movement to destroy the 7-layer boundaries that was designed in the Constitution started way back hundreds of years ago. And you look at the incremental movement that they made over time, you start to get that understanding that it's a long game.
This is a big monster that we're not going to throw one person's not going to throw one punch at and knock out.
Right.
Right.
So just like when in a football game, when you're grinding the ball down the field in the ground game, it's a game of inches. It's a game of incremental success. And every once in a while you have that big play, but every play is not going to be a Hail Mary play. And you just have to take that long view. And for me, every positive conversation is a win. And every new relationship is a win. And you learn to appreciate the little, plays of inches that get the first down, as opposed to be like, I didn't get a Hail Mary this game, or I didn't score a touchdown this game, so I'm a loser. Right?
I'm a loser and I'll never play again.
Right? You learn to have a different perspective. I'm in for the long game. I'm in for the country. I'm in to restore the Constitution and the rule of law. Well, and it's a long game.
Yeah, and then again, if we look at the people doing the opposite, which are trying to destroy the 7-layer boundary republic, is that they take a punch and they just keep moving. Like, oh, we didn't get that one. Oh, go for the next one. Oh, we didn't get that one. Oh, go for the next one. That's their mindset. And it works. And so we need to start taking on that mindset of say, okay, we're going to move in this direction. We're not going to win them all. And we might end up switching what we're doing and having to move in this direction a little while or whatever. But if you just keep moving forward, then you're actually accomplishing something. If you accept that I can't do anything, this is impossible, the system's rigged, there's nothing I can do, well, then you've lost the fight without even showing up, and that's exactly what the people working against us want.
You've given away your power.
Yes.
Anytime you allow someone to stop you from doing something, you've given that person your power.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super important for us to learn how to take our power back and stand up for what we believe in, even when it's uncomfortable, even when we lose our job, even when people write nasty letters to the editor about you. Like, whatever it is, you just have to get tough. And just like in football, you have to get tough and learn how to bounce back from adversity.
So, that's well said, Nancy. I want to wrap this up so we don't end up going too long. But before I do, I just wanted to ask, was there anything else that you wanted to add before we finish?
Well, if you live here in Washington State and you love Washington State politics, and I hope you do.
Love Washington State politics.
Right?
Well, I get your point. I get your point.
To play the game, you've got to love the game.
Right.
So please look for my column. It's called Dangerous Rhetoric. Right now, the easiest way to find it is to go to the Grays Harbor Weekly. They have dedicated a page on their online newspaper to the column, so it's easy to find there. And, give them some love, leave us some comments, and share it around. Ask your local newspaper editor if they'll publish the column. If you do that, you will be supporting a conversation, a broader conversation across the state that desperately needs to happen. We need to take our voices into other communities.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, thank you very much, Nancy, and I appreciate the time that you've taken to come on here.
I enjoyed it. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you, Dylan.